Hello, my dear friends. I cordially welcome you to my video lecture, the first video lecture on Corona COVID. In this lecture, I will be concentrating mainly on one aspect, that is why infants and children are less affected by COVID. Another aspect is, will there be any third wave of COVID? If so, what will be the effect on children? These aspects we will discuss in this lecture. Now, let us look at the figures. Today, our generation is passing through worst times due to COVID. Almost all the human population of all countries are affected by Corona and COVID. There is no exception. Almost all the countries, there is no distinction between the human races, no age group, no gender. All the people are affected for the last 1.5 years. We have witnessed the first wave and also the second wave, and there is a prediction that there will be a third wave in the months of August and September. Now let us see the COVID update today, 18/7/21. Throughout the world, more than 19 crores of people are affected due to COVID. They got the infection. The worst affected countries are United States of America, India, Brazil, Russia, France, after that Turkey and UK. In America, 34 million people, 3.4 crores of people, 34 million affected, out of which 6,24,712 people died. In India, 31 million people, more than 3 crores of people are affected by COVID, out of which 4,13,640 people died. In Brazil, 19 million, more than 19 million, 1.9 crore people, out of which 54,12,266 people died. Then Russia, these are the figures. 1,47 people, 1,47,655 people died. In France, these are the figures, out of which 1,011,467 people died. So these are the figures. America topmost, then India, then Brazil, Russia, France, closely followed by Turkey, UK. Now these are the figures, very interesting figures. For every 1 million people affected, 528 people died. Global average. global average is for every 1 million, 528 people died. In India, in America, for every 1 million, 1,876 people died. In India, it is only 297 for every 1 million 10 lakh people. The figure is very low. Brazil, 2,528. Russia, 1,011. France, 1,704. So here the death rate is high in United States of America, death rate is very high in Brazil, followed by America, then the France and other countries. So reasons for this are not clearly analyzed. Why death rate is very high in some countries. For example, in India, though the infection rate is very high, the death rate is very low. For every 1 million 10 lakh people, only 297 people died. Since the beginning of this pandemic outbreak, the percentage of children within the total COVID patients is very small. If you take into all the COVID patients and also the infants and children, the percentage of the infants and children affected by COVID is very less. The data collected by Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, China CDC, this was in 2020, children younger than 10 years age and within the age of 11 to 19 years occupied only 1% of the total cases. That means from within the age group 10 to 19 years, out of the total cases of COVID, the children affected are only 1%. However, this group represents 20% of the total population. The children, infants and children, become the 20% of the total population, but infection is only 1%. This indicates less prevalence of COVID-19 in pediatric population. Pediatric patients COVID-19 from the China CDC, the total number of cases analyzed 2,134. In children, if there is infection, asymptomatic 4.4, mild 50.9. Sometimes we may not detect the disease that they have been infected. Moderate 38.8, very severe 5.9. So here mild and moderate or more, severe less, and asymptomatic less. But if we compare these figures with the adults, the severe cases of patients are about 18.5. They had severe disease after the infection. They become serious. Severe means they become serious. That counts for 18.5. Age group wise, less than 1 year infants 10.6. Symptoms of severe and critical cases. From 1 to 5 years 7.3. 6 to 10 4.2. 11 to 15 4.1. More than 16 3% out of the children infected. The case fatality rate of age group 0 to 9, 10 to 9 was 0%. Though they are infected, may be asymptomatic, mild, moderate, severe, but there is no fatality, there are no deaths among the infants and children. Similar data from Italy and Korea. Italy, COVID-19 patients age of 88 to 18 years occupied only 1.2% out of the total COVID patients. Just 1.2. Case fatality rate of age group 9 to 19, 0 to 19. In this group 0 to 9, it is 0%. In this group, just 0.2%. Fatality rate is very less, though they got the infection. Data from the Korea reveals 6.3% of all cases tested positive of total all age groups. Only 6.3 are children under the age of 19 years. Data from USA. CDC USA. CDC stands for Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Among the patients of children, 2,572 below the age of 18 years was surveyed. Of all reported cases in the US, this occupied just 1.7% of total COVID patients. Children affected are very less, 1.7%. However, this age group makes up to 22% of US population. In US population, below 19 years, how many people? 20%. But infection rate is very less, 1.7. Thus, the data from different countries suggests that children are less symptomatic than adults. In India, let us take the official figures. During the first wave, 4.5 children are affected. In second wave, 10 to 15% of the children of the total COVID patients. In first wave, less, but in the second wave, this figure is high, 10 to 15%. Now, why infants and children are less affected by COVID? Age group gradient, we can divide the age: infants, children, young adolescents, adults, middle age group, old, very old, like this. If we analyze the infection of COVID in different age groups, children are less affected by COVID compared with older adults. Severe fatal COVID-19 disease much less common in infants, children, and young adults. This is an accepted fact in almost all the countries. The pattern is strikingly different that for infection with most other respiratory viruses. There are so many viruses that cause respiratory diseases. But the fact is that respiratory diseases are more common in children than the adults. But here, in the case of COVID, children are less affected with regard to infection, with regard to disease development, with regard to fatality. The reason for this difference between children and adults remain elusive. Why this difference, why infants and children are less affected, why the higher age groups are more affected, the scientific reasons are not yet available, reliable scientific reasons. It remains uncertain whether the age-related difference, this difference, is it due to that higher age groups above 20 years to 80 or 90, they are more susceptible to the disease, or infants and children are more resistant, more immune to the disease. These are two things. Why old people are more susceptible, more infected, more vulnerable. One reason. Second reason why, it may be the reason that children are more immune due to factors of protect younger age groups. Different hypotheses have been proposed to explain this difference. What is the difference? Why children and infants are less affected? Fatality rate is why less? Why they do not get the severe infections? One hypothesis is age-related differences in immune response. Immune responses will be different in children and adults, old age people. Stronger innate trained immune response leading to more effective virus containment and clearance. According to this hypothesis, the immune system will be stronger in infants and children. So therefore, they are not affected containment. And even if they are affected, the virus is shed out, that is cleared out. Another explanation for this hypothesis is weaker adaptive immune response and therefore less hyperinflammation. Adaptive immune response is less in children. Therefore, lower inflammatory cytokine response, or what we call cytokine storm, will be less in children than in adults. Sometimes the deaths are due to the cytokine storm. The second hypothesis, recurrent and current infections. Children, according to this hypothesis, the children are very frequently infected with various types of bacteria, with various types of viruses. So these infected viruses, bacteria, protect the infants and children from corona infection. More frequent infections with other pathogens help fight SARS-CoV-2. The third explanation is that cross-reactive coronavirus antibodies and T cells. There are some viruses very closely related to coronavirus, but they are non-pathogenic or less pathogenic. Perhaps the children and infants might have been infected earlier. They have developed the antibodies. So they may have the circulating human coronavirus variants. These are less pathogenic. So therefore, because of these infections, they have already developed the antibodies, neutralizing antibodies, and T cell immunity to commonly circulating HCO in younger age groups. They cross-protect against SARS-CoV. The antibodies produced against these viruses protect the children against the infection of coronavirus 2. Colonizing microbiota of nasopharyngeal oropharyngeal, lung, and gastrointestinal. There will be difference in the microbiota of these organs in children and adults. So one explanation is that the microbiota colonizing these organs in children protect the children against the coronavirus too. This is one explanation. Melatonin, it is an anti-inflammatory and antioxidant substance. It has been reported, according to this hypothesis, children will have higher levels of melatonin. It is anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. Melatonin inhibits colmogulin, which increases ACE2 expression and retention on cell surface so that the virus doesn't enter into the host cells. In silico studies suggest that melatonin inhibits SARS virus, a protease, that's SARS virus protease. In silico means bioinformatics studies simulating the virus structure and the melatonin. They have studied that the in silico studies, bioinformatics studies, revealed that melatonin inhibits the SARS-CoV-2 protease, main protease. Another off-target effects of the live vaccines. In children, especially in developed and underdeveloped countries, the children are given various types of vaccines for protection purpose against virus, bacterial infections, for just like BCG. So, the body develops a certain antibodies or it develops immune response, trained immunity from BCG, some viruses, MCV, OPV, more recent vaccination with live vaccines that have off-target effects. Actually, these vaccines against these vaccines protect the target, protect the children against the target organism. But at the same time, one beneficial aspect is they may protect the children and infants against the SARS virus. Trials show that BCG induced protection against viral infection. Actually, this is meant for against the bacterial infection. But still, it is protecting the SARS virus. Intensity of viral exposure. Another explanation, another hypothesis. Severity of COVID-19 associated with initial viral load. This is what we call inoculum potential. Certain load of virus is required for successful infection. Inoculum potential, the amount of virus needed for successful infection. Children are predominantly infected by transmission from adults. So, viral load will be less, even if they get the infection. Children are have less workplace. Generally, they do not go out except the schools or playgrounds like that. Shopping, travel, and nosocomial exposure to SARS-CoV-2. So they do not go generally outside except to 2-3 places. Home, playgrounds, school. Well, these are the places frequently visited. But adults, they go to different places, so therefore they get the infection. Another explanation is ACE2 receptors, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors. It has also been postulated that children have ACE2 receptors with lower affinity for SARS-CoV-2. ACE receptors have lower affinity for. These are the receptors. The spike protein gets attached to the ACE receptors. But in children, it is thought that they have the less affinity for the spike proteins of the virus and a difference in distribution across the body sites. So these ACE2 receptors are infrequently, at some places they are more, at some places they are less in children. That is one reason. Entry body sites, making the entry of the source CO2 into cells more difficult in children. Still some questions. These are the 8 hypotheses proposed to explain why the children are less affected. Why the infection rate increases with age group gradient? As the age increases, the infection rate increases. Above 20, above 30, above 40, 50, 60, 70, like that. Why? What is the reason? What makes the older people to get infection more? It is also uncertain why children with unusual risk factors for infections such as immunosuppression are not at high risk for severe. Even in children also, there are some people suffering from some ailments, diseases, or they are immunocompromised. In such people also, infection rate is very less. In contrast, even healthy children also affected. These are two different aspects. Controversial. Why sick children are not affected? Why healthy children are affected? Then need unraveling the mechanisms underlying the age-related difference. If we understand why children are less affected, why adults and old people are more affected, this will pave the way for tackling the problem, severity of COVID-19, provide important insights and opportunities for prevention and treatment of this novel infection. Conclusions. What can we conclude out of these studies? There are no scientific reasons to predict that there will be a third wave of COVID. Many people, scientists, virologists, epidemiologists, they are predicting that there will be another wave, third wave in the coming months, but there is no scientific reason. 1. Did anybody forecast the second wave? Exact time and how much duration it stays and what is the intensity? Nobody did exactly predict that. So if that is the case, how can they say that there will be a third wave? Then what is the basis for the prediction that third wave, even if sets in, will affect the infants and children? And many people are predicting that there will be a third wave. In third wave, the children will be the more vulnerable group. It will be more in children. Then again, what is the reason? One profound explanation. So why there are people saying that the children will be affected in the third wave? One explanation that so far the children are not vaccinated. This is one reason they give, explanation they give. But we must also remember that this group is exposed to virus for the last 1.5 years. They are exposed to all variants of virus. But still the infection rate is less. So therefore, this reason may not stand. that because they are not vaccinated, they will be more infected. Hence, there is no need for panic or pessimism. We should not be afraid. We should not become panic. At the same time, let us not be negligent because there is no panic, it is over. So we should not be neglect. We should take all precautionary measures like wearing the mask, maintaining the distance, not going to the public places, washing the hands. Every care we must take. We must teach, we must allow the children to take precautionary measures until the pandemic disappears. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.